I guess I should have watched the end of that video because I don't remember where I left off at.
So you're talking about like meeting up with your boy and his girl, and y'all would drive to somewhere in Las Colinas. And
oh yeah, okay, yeah, and I remember. Yeah, all right. So yeah, so I felt like that drive, like I was saying, like yeah, my idea of like how far shit is not realistic, right? Because it felt far, but
yeah. And at that, you probably just been like to Oakland, or
yeah.
When
like
I was that age, like I haven't gone anywhere. So.
Yeah, at that point, I think I was even living. I might have been living in Irving at that time. You know.
Okay.
So I can, you know, if I was living, I think I was living in Irving at that time. So I don't remember how old we were exactly at that point, but definitely older than 18 at that point.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, I was tattooing. You know, where I was going, meeting him up, watching him tattoo, kind of picking up whatever I could from him, whatever, yada yada. I don't know what. I was working at the time too. You know, I had a job. I already had my daughter, my oldest daughter.
Oh, so you have a kid at this point?
Yeah, I had a kid at this point.
And where were you working?
I was working at a dealership, moving cars. I was a porter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it worked. You know, it paid bills and shit. You know.
Yeah.
So at this point, I remember that we were. So what happened? So the reason I was in Irving was because we were living with my mom, me and my old lady and my babe, my little girl, and that shit just didn't work out. You know, like
that always sounds rough.
Yeah, I mean, it just didn't. You know, it was cool for me, but like obviously, like it was rough on my old lady. You know, living in another person's house, coming from like she was living with her folks and all that, but obviously we had a baby together, so we wanted to live with each other, but we were we were broke. You know, we had no money to like try to live somewhere else. So like, I was working at a dealership with my friend at the time. One of my friends that got me that job, you know, and it was a pretty easy job. It was just waking up early, going fucking driving to work, whatever, fucking.
You said car porter? Or?
So the job title was called a porter. So pretty much what I did was.
I've never heard of that.
So I'll break it down for you. So like, you would pull up with your car to get it serviced. You do your thing with the service advisor or whatever, and then while they're either working that out or they're getting that done, the car's gonna stay there. So rather than the car just staying on the driveway, I would park it, take it where it needed to go. You know what I mean? I would port it.
Oh, okay.
I guess.
Because I was thinking you're using some big truck to like.
No, it wasn't even that fancy.
I
was just driving
a car.
Driving other people's cars all fucking day, you know, and running and getting them. And if they needed something done, they'd, hey, go get this, go get this car, or go pick this part up, or you know, whatever. Oh, you gotta go with this car from this other place, whatever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, easy job. It wasn't nothing about it that was hard, you know, but.
Almost like valeting.
Essentially just valeting, I guess, but just for the dealership, you know. And so I was working there, and then, like I said, that whole living situation. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't bad, but it just, you know, the situation at the time, it wasn't working, you know. So, you know, shit, we needed to bounce, you know. So luckily, one of my friends another friend that was working there at the time, some dude that I've been knowing since we was young. Domingo, actually. I hope he's cool with saying his name, but man, he the biggest heart in the world, bro. You know what I mean? Because he pretty much was like, man, why don't you just come stay with us? You know? And he had a wife and kids in a 2-bedroom apartment. Oh. And he gave me one of his bedrooms. Yeah. To stay with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's crazy.
Dog, it was. That situation was something too, you know what I mean? But like, man, I will never talk shit about the situation because this fool didn't have to do that.
So was he like charging you?
Nah, man. You know, he was looking out. He was just being a good friend, you know, like.
Damn, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, dog, to this day, I have so much like. You know, it's funny because I say this, but I don't do nothing to like pay him back or whatever. But like, there's nothing I can do.
Talk to him? And, like,
I mean, when I see him, you know what I mean, or like I haven't talked to him in years, you know.
Yeah.
But he's a good dude, man. Like, from the bottom of his heart, like.
Yeah, because when you said that, I was thinking like, oh, he has like this big crib. And
no, this was like a 2-bedroom apartment. This fool had twins and a baby boy. He had 3 kids.
So it's 5 of them and 3 of y'all.
3 of us. Yeah, in a 2-bedroom apartment. Luckily on the first floor. You know, I do remember that.
Yeah. Fuck.
Yeah, so I remember and you know, I didn't know any better then either. I probably shouldn't have like imposed either. I probably shouldn't have like taken that. I didn't think about it then. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but man, you know, I feel like at that time you're probably thinking like, let me get out of.
Yeah, so we just needed to get out of that, you know, and it's fucked up because I remember when we was moving, when we was leaving, you know, it was all good. Like we didn't have to leave all fast, but I remember we started moving out, and my mom was like, "All right, well, shit, y'all gotta go," you know. And I remember some other dude that I knew was helping me move because he had a truck, helping move all my shit, and man, it was fucked up because I remember it wasn't that bad. It was fucked up. Like I remember we were moving my shit, and on one of the trips to the apartment, or no, I'm lying. We were about to leave, and I needed to move his truck, and he was driving. So when I hopped in his truck to move it because somebody needed to get out the driveway or something, I looked and I seen one of my watches that he kind of like snuck away in the little compartment, and man, that fucking like I couldn't believe it, dog. You know what I mean?
The dude that told you to come live with him.
No, another friend that I had
that was helping you.
That was helping me move. He had a truck because he had a pickup.
Yeah, okay, I get it.
You know what I mean? So
damn.
I saw it there. You know what I mean? I didn't put it there. You know, I knew where he grabbed it from because I had it was a watch that I mean it was like a fossil. It wasn't even a nice watch. It was just like a fossil watch that I had that I remember actually one of my sister's I think one of my sister's friends gifted me on like one of my birthdays when I was young, you know, and I just had it.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing it there, and that shit like fucked me up.
Of course.
But I couldn't say shit because this dude was helping me move, you know. So I remember all my shit was in his truck at that point. So I remember that whole road trip, I had to just suck it up.
You had to just eat it.
And I ate it, and I remember just thinking about it. On the way there, I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna let him help me move in. He helped me move my shit in, and I was just like, I can't believe this. And he was my friend, man. Like, he was like,
because that's what we always say. You find out you're real friends when you're moving.
Yeah, you know, I trusted him to like help me move. You know, like I was like, this dude's gonna help me move. So after he did all that, I just couldn't, you know, obviously do nothing about it. So at the very least, I called him out on it. You know.
So you did?
Yeah. So I was like, hey, man, like. I seen that watch there, bro, and like I'm like, I just want to say that's real fucked up, dog. You know what I mean? Like
this is after like you got all the shit out.
Yeah. This is in the parking lot of the apartments.
Yeah,
you know.
After it was done.
And you know, I ain't gonna lie, I was like really hurt about it.
Yeah.
Like I was mad, and I at this point I probably should have just like hit him or some shit. You know, I didn't do any of that. You know.
Yeah. Because it's conflicting because you're like, man, this dude just helped you with his grab all this heavy
and then
shit.
I was like, it was a fucked up time too, you know what I mean? Like, whatever, like, I just never forget that, you know what I mean? I remember being like, damn, dog, and I remember him being like, damn, dog, I'm sorry, man.
I was about to say, what did he say?
Yeah, he was just like, pretty much like he got caught, you know?
Yeah.
So, and I got my watch back, obviously, so I was like, damn, bro, like, fuck you, you know what I mean? Like, that's why I pretty much was the conversation, like, nigga,
like, I just helped you move.
I know, now that's why I was like, fuck, you know, so whatever. I mean, at that point, I mean, I'd be a fool to keep calling him my friend, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
He was a friend, but whatever, right?
That's crazy.
It was dumb. We were kids too, you know, like, but like, it's like, damn, why are you gonna try to take from me when like, nigga, dude, I'm fucking telling you what I'm going through, you know?
How much you're struggling right now.
But anyway, so that happened. But luckily, you know, like we started living there, whatever. So still around that time, I was still doing the whole tattoo thing, like meeting up, you know, my homie and fucking.
I'm assuming you're charging at this point, right? Like
no. I wasn't really even tattooing. I was just going to wherever he was at because he was tattooing and he was inviting me. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to be around it. You know, that's how much I wanted to really get into tattooing. I just was like, it wasn't even for the money then. I just didn't even know nothing about it. I didn't even know about charging. I just didn't have no clue about it, you know.
Yeah.
Up until like from high school, I never made any money even then, you know what I mean? It was just me doing this thing, you know. Mm-hmm. And make sure it's recording. So for whatever reason, I remember that dude Ricky pulled up on me. He like hit me up, and he just out of nowhere just gifted me all his tattoo shit. it was literally like it was literally a shoebox.
Yeah.
I remember it was a of Air Force like shoebox.
Yeah. So he just like he was quitting.
He pretty much was like, man, here, like you do it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
kind of just, yeah. So I remember like I was living in that apartment, and I was like, damn, I was stoked. So I remember like I got all that shit. I thanked them and shit, and I might have even been that same day. I went in, like plugged all that shit up, and I tried tattooing myself.
Damn.
And I did a little letter on my thigh.
What letter?
I did with two letters. I did an O and a C.
Okay.
And yeah. So from that point on, I just started to kind of really started to mess with it. You know what I mean? Like, kind of just letting people know I was doing it, and like.
So at this point, you're thinking too, like the gears are going for like, hey, I might do this as a career, or this.
No, this was still no career. This was just like I want to do this.
I want to do this fun hobby.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I can. I was like, maybe I can make some money. You know.
Yeah.
So let me try to get the timeline right. So while living with my homie and doing all that, I don't remember if I tattooed at all. I might have. I'm sure I did, but I don't remember. So I didn't stay with him like too long. Maybe a few months or like less than a year. Definitely less than a year. So I ended up being able to. Actually, one of the dudes that worked at that dealership, he was a mechanic. He owned like properties and in the cliff, and it turns out he had like an apartment open up. You know what I mean? So somehow he caught wind. I caught wind that he had that. I chopped it up with him. We met him up. Whatever. We checked out the apartment, so I was able to like get the apartment. I gave him the deposit and did all that bullshit. And so I ended up moving out of that. My homie's apartment, luckily, because that situation was starting to get a little like.
It has to.
It was tense. It was tense, though.
I'm gonna assume one bathroom. Like.
Duh, yeah, one bathroom, fucking
8 people.
8 people, and my homie that lived there, my homie, he was making pretty decent money at the time. Mm-hmm. He was like he worked in the like in the body paint and body part of the dealership, so he was making like decent money. Way more money than I was. So he had like a nice TV and like a badass computer and like he even had like a nice car.
Yeah. Damn, that was just such a kindness out of his heart of just because he didn't have to let you do that at all.
Man, I mean, and for other than I don't know why he did it. Maybe he just was crazy. I mean, whatever. I don't know. He just was looking out, man. And like I said, to this day,
I feel like I have this big hurt to myself. And it'd be hard for me to let a homie that had a wife and a kid, like, in here, I'd be like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
And I think this fool did it in an apartment.
Yeah, with like, and not even thinking twice. Like, he didn't ask his old lady. Like, we would go to lunch together, and I was telling him my situation.
Yeah.
And he was like, man, why don't you just come live with me, And I was like,
wow.
At the time, I was kind of like I said, I didn't think about it, but I was just like, yeah, sounds better than what I'm fucking, fuck it, Nah, I mean, fucking hats off to him. You know what I mean?
Bro,
fucking
he sounds like a fucking saint. Like,
yeah, he's a good dude, man. So, so we moved out of there, got our own place, and then that's when I remember like starting to really like, okay. At that point, I had like friends that were down to get tattooed. People I worked with and people around me that I grew up with. They were just like down. So. Yeah, I started tattooing, like started doing like my neighbor, for example, or like homeboys that I grew up with since we were little, tattooing them. So I was tattooing out of that apartment,
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it I was tattooing myself too because I was trying to learn, so like.
How many tattoos have you done on yourself, would you say? You have to guess, like.
I mean, at least, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 or 6.
That's a lot.
I did. I remember one time I was at that when we got that apartment. I found a bunch of furniture like on Craigslist. I remember I found a couch, a shitty little dining table. We had a bed or whatever for some reason. A bed. We just had a bed,
Mm-hmm.
But I remember we had that little furniture. So one day I wasn't working or something, and I did that Dallas that I have on my leg, going down on my shin. I don't know if you noticed that at all, but
You did that.
yeah, I did that. Yeah, I did that.
I think you did something like that.
Yeah, and it's funny because my lady always says she remembers me just like her coming and like me just like bent up tattooing myself on my leg and shit, you know.
She's like, we ain't never making out the hood.
But so yeah, I was at that point I was tattooing more people, and I was at that point I was probably charging, you know, maybe not a lot, you know.
Yeah, but still, it's
20, 30, $40.
It adds up. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and yeah, I needed it, you know. It was helping me out, you know. So yeah, I was tattooing, you know, whenever I could, you know. I would, when whoever was down, and like, it's funny how much people trust you, man.
Well, and I feel like it's not really trust. I think it's one thing that's gonna be there forever, that people just don't want to pay for tattoos. So even they're just like, hey, I just started tattooing 2 minutes ago. They're like, yeah, so would you just do this? And they'll even be down to let you do a sleeve. There's always going to be those people.
Right.
Because they just like, yeah, I don't want to pay.
No, I'm sure you're right. I'm sure fucking, yeah, I'm sure 95% of those people that tattooed were like, oh yeah, cheap. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then obviously at the time, I was down. I didn't care, you know. Yeah, I wanted to do it, you know, so. Yeah, I tattooed a lot of like people that worked at that Ford dealership, you know, like mechanics and fucking the other porters, and they were just down or whatever to get tattooed. And so yeah, you know, from that apartment to I actually jumped around to like 3 apartments in that dude's, you know, properties, because he had like 4 plexes, you know.
Yeah.
So I jumped around, you know, and I tattooed in all of them, you know, and man, it was interesting, you know. Now that I think about it, definitely still not sanitary. Fucking had no clue what I was doing.
Yeah.
Taking 3 hours on something that should have took me 30 minutes probably, you know.
Yeah, because at this point, you don't have any
clue, any training. This was all me just YouTubing, you know. I know people talk about shit like that, but I did.
Were you YouTubing?
I
just didn't know that was out then.
Yeah. I remember actually I YouTubed some stuff, and I didn't know then, but like I remember I read into videos of like, I want to say it was like Danny Fowler tattooing or something.
Yeah.
I didn't know the name then, but like,
yeah.
I don't know if you know who that is, but like he made machines.
Okay.
I don't know. He might have tattooed too pretty well, but I remember the machines.
I wanted you to find out what's his name there. Don't copy pop.
Oh man. He probably would have put me on. He probably would have put me in the shop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He would have put me in the shop,
so
and
you can make 200 a day.
Yeah. And I would have jumped on it. If there was that dude's shop was around, then I probably would have been in there, you know, if I would have knew about it.
Like, that would have been crazy. You're like, yeah, I used to work at the candy shop. Like,
oh, man. Womp, womp, womp. But we're not here to talk about people like that. But anyway, so I'm, you know, we jumped around place to place, and, you know, I was still tattooing. So by the time we got to, like, I ended up renting, like, a duplex, you know, with me and my old lady, and still my oldest at the time. She was, like, a few years at that point.
And you're still doing the carporting thing at this point?
So by that time, I was actually working at another job.
Okay.
You know, I was working at a rent-a-center.
Mm-hmm.
Still tattooing, and, you know, people knew I tattooed, so they would still, like, I was probably tattooing maybe, like, twice a week or 3 times a week, you know, I don't know.
Okay.
You know, and I was just doing all these tattoos.
You're just doing it at the house?
All this, at the house, you know.
At the house, yeah.
So, you know, I tattooed at that duplex, I remember. I still, like, that's when I really started remembering, like, I tattooed there, you know what I mean? Friday nights, Saturday nights after work, people would come over, you know, I'd tattoo them. I'd have a little setup, you know, probably, you know, at that point, I think I had like a little suitcase rather than, because so it went from like,
no Nike box.
No Nike box, you know. I remember one time, let me take it back, to like a few, like years before that, when I had that shoebox. I remember I went to a friend's apartment. So no, I was tattooing my friend, and it was his friend's apartment, and they might have like barely got the apartment because there was like no furniture, like none. Like I think we had like a chair he could sit on, and I was sitting on something else. Yeah. And I remember there was no light bulbs, so I remember like we had to go get like light bulbs because there was like no light, you know.
Yeah.
So, and then I remember like I started tattooing them. Finally, we got set up, and like I wasn't able to get nothing in. I don't know what. So now that we know, these fucking needles were probably like
just
throwing up fucking gang signs and shit. You know, because I remember like I remember even like the skin pulling.
Oh.
You know what I mean? And I was like, oh shit, this shit ain't working. You know, so wiping and it was just like red and like fucking raised. So I was like,
he's like, how's it looking?
Good. Shit is looking. So you know, so we didn't do it. We didn't finish. But I remember, just leaving. But man, I mean, that's just I was like stoked that I was able to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, years later, whatever, I'm in that duplex, and while I was there, you know, again, shit, still money was always an issue. You know, so I remember we moved out of there and we moved back in with my folks.
Oh.
You know. At that point,
because we just getting like kind of just that rough. You think like just
it was, you know, it was just like we had to make a decision, you know, like and luckily, like my old lady, man, like she was always the one that was like head first about things. You know what I mean? Like very like I was, if anything, I was the dumb one. You know, you know, she was very much like no, we can't be doing this. Like we gotta like get a house and do all that shit. You know, so. But we didn't have money like that then, so like we had to like try to cut our bills. So we moved that back in with my mom, and she was, you know,
rent free is so much better.
Yeah, and I mean we would help out where we could, you know. But yeah, it was essentially rent free, you know, and we had a little space and we made it work, you know. And at that point we had
Your mom was like, well.
Shit, looky, huh? Should have stayed, you know. But
where's your daddy, mom?
Come on, man, you know.
Yeah.
But so you know, but we had an agenda. We had an agenda at that point. You know, we had like a goal and an agenda, and we knew.
And it's cool, like you said. You can really just be like, all right, this is what we need to do. Step back, but then.
To get forward. You know,
absolutely.
At that point, I was still working. You know, my old lady was still working.
Rent-A-Center still.
I believe Rent-A-Center. My lady was working already. Excuse me. She was working. I was working. You know, at that point we were able to save money and like, you know, kind of be smart with our money a little bit, you know, and I was still tattooing. So at that point, like, I was really tattooing as much as I could, you know. Mm-hmm. Like, and I was tattooing at the house, and my mom was cool with it, and I was still I have this one memory of like me tattooing like some people I knew late night one time. It's funny because a lot of these dudes now that I'm thinking about, like, I still tattoo them.
Damn,
you know, like some of the memories that I have, I still tattoo them to this day. You know, I still, you know. But I remember I was tattooing one time, like some group of dudes or homies or something, and like they wanted to take a smoke break. So like I went outside and took a smoke break with them, and I never took off my gloves. I remember.
Oh, sick.
This guy.
Hey, at least you're using gloves at this
I was using gloves, but the entire time, you know what I mean. So I remember even like
your hands were clean.
My hands, yeah. Well, shit, I know. Well, I was smoking too. I was smoking too. So it was. Oh my god, it was the worst.
Blunts.
And I remember trying to be like fucking kind of trying to be like, you know what I mean? You know, try and pass it, and it was just. And then we went back in and started tattooing again. And
fuck yeah. So
it was a lot of that, and you know.
I still feel like you do that now.
Oh man. But
Street bread.
Street bread. Shout out Spanky.
Shout out Spank.
But yeah, so I was just doing that, and then let me see, and then after that, I'm sure I was working like at another job or something, because that Rent-A-Center shit was lame as fuck. You know what I mean? No disrespect to nobody working at Rent-A-Center, but you know, for me, it didn't work out. So
I want your client tomorrow to be there. I'm like, I heard the podcast, man.
Yeah, so yeah, lame, right? You want my like, all right, dude. Shit. No, so yeah, it didn't work, and I ended up getting like this other job, and I think it was like a call center job. As a matter of fact, that was my first and only call center job.
How old are you at this point?
Well, I'm at maybe 20. You know, I don't know. Yeah. You know, so I don't know.
Youngster,
yeah, I was still fairly young. You know, 20. I was like 19. I don't remember. And you know, I did it. Whatever. Man, at this point, I just knew I needed to make money.
Yeah.
I knew I needed to fucking provide, and I knew we had this goal, and I was never really about like all that street shit. Like I was always around it with friends and all that, but I boiled it down to like, yeah, I wasn't down enough to do none of that shit. Because I didn't want none of the consequences that came from that shit.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I never wanted to really get involved with nothing like that. So I always felt like I needed to keep a job. And don't get me wrong, I was around all that shit, and it was like, damn, looks like fun making money. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I know just firsthand because I was the same. I was around all of it, and I never.
Yeah. I remember. Yeah, so you get it, and I'm sure a lot of people do. We're not. This ain't nothing uncommon. Like
we're not special.
No, fortunately, but yeah, so whatever, I worked at that call center, and I remember I hated that shit too, but like whatever, I knew I had to keep that job, and it was cool. At least it was like not labor intensive, or I was sweating. It was just like answering people's calls and, oh, how can I help you today? And like, oh, I gotta care about your problems, and remember not caring and whatever. Anyway, so I was still tattooing. At that point, I was like still tattooing. I was even tattooing people at that job. Like I always made it very like.
Do you feel like you were getting like better at this point? At least.
I mean, I was getting a little better. Yeah. I was able to do like bigger stuff.
Yeah.
Like I was like,
shading.
Shit was shading. I was like, I was still getting tattooed too. So like I would go and get tattooed.
So now at this point, are you getting tattooed at a shop? Have you been to a shop at this point?
At this point. Yeah, I got tattooed I got tattooed by Zamora. There's some dude that had a shop in the bazaar.
Okay.
He's actually a really good tattooer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's like really good. He was really good then, and he's still really good now.
Yeah. What piece did he do on you?
He did this. He did a Green Reaper on me. A Grim Reaper on me.
Okay.
And I remember this one too because. I believe it was for like my old lady's birthday, and she wanted to get a tattoo. So I was like, "Oh yeah, we'll get tattooed." So her dad had gotten tattooed by him before, and her dad was like, "Go to him, like just go to him." Yeah. So he had a shop at the Irving Bazaar off of Irving Boulevard at the time. So we walked in. Obviously, he was available, or whatever he were available. So I just picked a Grim Reaper off the Flash,
Flash.
And I went first. I remember my old lady, because she was like, my old lady was like, my dad said get tattooed by him, so I'm gonna get tattooed by him. But I remember this other dude came and was like, oh, what do you want to get, And I was looking. At first, I remember I was gonna get that see no, hear no. I know you seen them, the one with the knives, that Flash. Mm-hmm. I wanted to get that. He was like, oh yeah, I could do it for you. But I remember I was like, I ain't finna get tattooed by you, dog. And luckily I didn't, because I won't say no names, but this fool was trash.
Yeah.
And
say no.
Man, nah. But anyway, so I ended up going. I think first. I got tattooed by Zamora, and I still remember this, like watching him, and he did this entire thing with the mag, which is not. I mean, now it's not like a crazy thing, right? We do a lot of that shit, but at the time, I remember being like, "Oh, how you doing?" I remember asking him questions.
Was he cool about it?
Yeah, he was just like, oh, it's just gonna be nothing but shading. I remember him saying, what a shading, what a shading. And I was like, damn. I remember being like, damn, this fool didn't use no like outline, like none, just did the entire thing, and it came out good. The what's the shit?
Scythe.
The scythe and everything, just all mag work,
What's that motion
again? So anyway, yeah, I got tattooed by him. I already had gotten a tattoo by Mike Tidwell. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
Man, I have.
He was at Obscurities, or Trilogy at the time. It was like over there in the neighborhood or whatever.
Yeah.
I got a portrait by him because I remember one of the dudes I worked with at Ford.
Your chest, the dad?
Yeah, that my dad's portrait.
Yeah.
One of that dealership, he had like a super nice black and gray portrait on his arm, and I remember always being like, damn, like. I would just look at it. It was his mom's portrait. I remember just asking him, man, who did it? And he told me. And I was like, man, I want to get tattooed by this dude. So I remember like, yeah, I went over there, asked how much it would be, made an appointment with him. Because I remember being like, man, I can't, I need to save with the bread, And whatever, I remember that day too, man, going, getting tattooed. Like the appointment came. I finally had. It probably wasn't even a lot of money at the time. It might have been like $300-400 for a portrait.
Yeah.
But at the time, oh, that felt like $4,000. You know what I mean? But it was like, man, I remember I took the picture that I wanted, and I remember he made the stencil on those transparencies. You remember the overhead transparencies?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember he made. That's how his stencil was. I remember he came. He showed me the copy and then transparency, and I remember I couldn't even grasp anything that he did, you know. I just remember being like, this, like, I'm never gonna learn how to do this. Like, I'm never gonna be able to do this. I remember like, fuck it, whatever, right? But I remember he had me in the room and he was shaking a bottle of ink, and it's funny. This is note to clients, you know. Hear this out. But I remember he fucking was shaking that bottle of ink and it was kind of open and it's like. And it splattered, and some of it splattered on my shorts. And I remember him being like, "You don't care about those shorts, right?" And I remember trying to be cool and be like, "Nah, man, whatever." It was a brand new. I remember there were some gray Jabots.
Oh man,
brand new, like those gray, like oh man. Never got that stain out. You know, that's why he was like, "You don't care about those shorts, right?" Because them hoes is gone, dog. Out of there. But I remember trying to be like, "Well, yeah," and then you know, and then now I'm like, "Yeah, now don't wear your nice shit," you know, because if it gets dirty, it's done. It's over. It's done. There's no getting that shit. There's no getting that shit out. So I never got out. I had those shorts till here recently, you know.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, I don't know what I think I donated them or something because they were big ass shorts and shit. Yeah. So, but they still had that stain on there. But yeah, the portrait came out though. You know, it's funny, like full circle, right? Because I ended up meeting him again, and he worked in Seattle, where he lives and works in Seattle.
Oh wow!
And I seen him.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, like the first time I did the Seattle convention, I you know, I remember being like, "Fucking, you're my like," and I was
fucked up my Jabot shorts.
Yeah, I was like, you know. But I remember being stoked, like, "Dang, you remember doing this portrait?" And he was like, "Oh shit," you know, like it was just crazy seeing him, you know. Yeah, he was like, I don't know what the fuck that is, dog. You know, fucking stupid ass Mexican. So I moved out of there. But anyway, so so at that point, I was already kind of getting tattooed by people and shit.
Going to shops,
going to shops. I recognized good work, I feel like, you know, and so I was, you know, working at that call center, still tattooing, whatever, hating life. And then but I remember, so what happened, I still never forget why I stopped working there. These motherfuckers, man, they wanted me to, they had me scheduled to work on Thanksgiving, you know, which is whatever, like, woe is me, right? A lot of people work on fucking Thanksgiving, but I remember being like, I ain't fucking working on Thanksgiving. And I remember because on Thanksgiving we would play football and shit, you know, and I was like, I want to go play, you know, I want to do all that shit, so I didn't go to work, you know. And I remember the next day or whatever when I went, they were like, I remember the stupid ass
call center.
The call center. I remember the stupid ass little motherfucker called me in his little cubicle and shit, and he was like, "Yeah, you didn't call in, man. Like you just no showed." And I was kind of like, "It was Thanksgiving, man." And he was kind of like, I remember he kind of being like, "Well, man, like you're fired, you know." And I remember being like I ain't never felt so good, you know.
Oh, so yeah.
Man, I was just like, fuck this job.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you were like.
Oh, so I'm fucking missing a major step here, you know. My bad, right? So by that point, you know, just rewind a little bit. So prior to that, I was posting shit on Facebook and you know whatever,
like tattoos
and shit like that. I would post like me drawing lettering and all this shit. So a dude, his name is Uriel or Oreo, homeboy of mine. I still chop it up with him from time to time. He like would comment on my shit, you know, and kind of like whatever, just be like, "Oh, that's cool, that's tight," you know. And he was working at a shop, so we started kind of getting into contact with each other, and I kind of started like, you know, whatever, like chopping it up with him, and pretty much he was like, "Man, I can get you a job over here."
What shop was it?
It was called Triple D Tattoos in the Grove. It was in Pleasant Grove off of like Lake June. And
is that the one Ivan was working at?
I don't think Ivan ever worked there. No, I don't think so. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
But so I went up there. I met him up. I think the owner. The owner's name was George at the time. Whoever else worked, it was like two other dudes that worked there. Man, I'm trying to remember. Well, one of the dudes' names was damn, I forgot his name, but he was actually a really good tattooer. He was throwed off, but he was really good. I remember him being all tatted up. His head was all tatted, and it was just like throwed off, right? But so I was like working there after that call center job. So I remember like I had that.
That's why you're like.
So yeah, well, not really, because I went every day, but never tattooed. I probably worked there like a month and tattooed like 2 times.
Oh wow.
But I was fucking stoked.
Yeah, you're in a shop now.
I was in a shop, so I was like, hell yeah, like I'm in a shop. It's funny, still at this time, I really didn't know I was going to be doing this. I just kind of was like...
You're thinking this is just another fucking...
I was just rolling with it.
Carported.
Yeah, I was just rolling with it. I just knew like, all right, I'm able to make money tattooing at the house. Maybe I can make money at the shop. But obviously, I had to pay at the shop, but it wasn't... Whatever, I didn't really trip, Mm-hmm. So I remember having all my shit over there. And... so yeah, I was working there. Like I would leave that I would literally leave that call center job and just go over there right after. From like I don't know what time I'd get off, maybe 3 or 4, and I'd go straight over there and be there till whatever time I had to leave. And a lot of it was crickets. You know what I mean? But like whatever, it was cool. It was wild. Whatever. It was a lot of shit. It was a trip being in there. All them dudes are wild. They talked a lot of shit, and it was a lot of fucking bullshit, you know what I mean? Which is funny because, like, I don't know if I should say all those things here. I guess I could, right? That's what's crazy about this podcast shit, right? You could disclose all this,
Mm-hmm.
but nothing fucked up. It was just a lot of shit that I was, wasn't used to, right?
Mm-hmm. That's cool. So now we know the history of this. Is your first shop here?
First shop. This is literally the very first shop that I was working at. I had stepped into other shops at the time, obviously, because I was getting tattooed, and actually at that point I already had got tattooed by Boog.
Oh, yeah. Fuck, that's cool.
Yeah, because I remember I already had that tattoo by Boog, and I remember they're kind of like, "Oh shit, you got tattooed like."
So where'd you get tattooed by Boog?
So all right, so my bad. I guess my bad.
Yeah,
my bad,
such
Boog.
A big thing.
Yeah. So while I was either working at I don't know where I was working at the time. It might have been Rent-A-Center, because I feel like I was making more money then, so I was probably able to afford to get tattooed by Boog, which wasn't at the time a lot of money. But I remember Boog, I had him on Facebook, and obviously I already knew about Boog and fucking all that shit, So I remember he posted a tattoo. He posted a tattoo on Facebook. I still remember it was a bunch of lettering with like cloud work. Behind it, and I just looked in raised, and it looked so fucking nice. And I remember writing, "Damn, I did the whole. How much for that? You know what I mean? How much for that? And
you do house calls.
And I remember he quoted me on that.
Oh, damn.
He said a number like, "Oh, that shit would be like whatever," and I was like, "Fuck yeah, I want that shit." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But stupid, because I didn't want that. I just wanted like a tattoo like that.
Yeah.
So whatever, I like made like an appointment with him. Somehow I don't even know how we scheduled that, but like I made an appointment with him. He was working at the tattoo shack. And over here off of Lancaster.
Yeah. That's Lil Chris's shop, right?
No, his name is Weddle. But Lil Chris always worked there. I think that was always a confusion. I feel like...
Oh, yeah. Damn, that's news to me.
Yeah, the dude's in a wheelchair that owns it, But Lil Chris always worked there,
Oh, okay, wow.
Because I thought that too for a while.
Yeah.
But no, it's... The dude Weddle that actually owns it is some dude named Weddle. And he's like... He's in a wheelchair. And yeah, Lil Chris worked there. So I pulled up. I still never forget this. And R.I.P. Boog, man, But I pulled up. It was my first time meeting Boog. Obviously, I pulled up on time, whatever. I'm looking to flash. This fool didn't pull up till fucking maybe an hour later or some shit, And real nonchalant, like, "Oh, yeah, what's up, whatever." And I was like, "Oh, my God, you're Boog,
Yeah.
So I remember he was like, "What do you want to get?" And I showed him that See No Evil, that same flash with the knives, fucking, that skull one. I know you've seen it.
Yeah.
And he was like, "All right, bet, whatever." So I told him, because that's what I wanted. I wanted skulls, with the See No Evil, Hear No Evil, Speak No Evil, or whatever. So he set up or whatever, and he was like, "All right, dog." So like, he was like, "I'm gonna just draw it on you, So I sat down. He drew it on me. And I love the tattoo, right? But like, he drew 3 chicks. Obviously you seen my tattoo.
Yeah.
See No Evil, Hear No Evil. They're cool. I like them. But I remember being just so impressed that he drew all this shit on.
Absolutely.
And I was just getting tattooed by him, and I remember just like,
it's so cool that you knew who he was at this point too. Like, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I knew who he was. I was very familiar. I was like, damn, this dude's doing it. He's like the man, wow, you know. And I was able to get tattooed by him. I was so fucking stoked, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember like he like so he started. I remember he started. He did like the outline on me, and I remember he was using those. You remember those pneumatic machines?
Yes.
Yeah. And I remember he was like, "Man, it's the new shit, dog," and you know, like hyping it up, like it's that, you know, whatever. And
yeah, I'm assuming you told him like you're tattooing.
I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. And so yeah, he did the outline on me, and then I remember we took a break. And I remember this nigga just fell asleep on the couch. Like, I remember he was, I'm gonna take a little break down. And I was like, all right, cool. You know, so I remember like I went outside. I think I smoked a cigarette or something. I came back in and this fool was just laid out on the couch, just like out. And I was like, well, all right, shit. You know, like, you know, fuck it. You know, I guess I'm gonna just wait. You know what I mean? So. Whatever, he woke up at some point. You know, he wasn't a long ass nap, but motherfucker took a nap. You know?
Imagine you doing that to a client right now. They were like, dude, what the fuck?
Yeah. And he did it in my face. We had no problem.
no like
in the back room. Like, no, I walked in, the fool was just like out on the couch. So I was like, fuck it, you know? But again, I was like, shit, I'm getting a dope ass tattoo, and I'm fucking getting tattooed by Boog. And so anyway, he finished it. We knocked it out. I fucking, went home. I remember it was just like fucking red and swollen, and I was just like, damn, this is so tight, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I got tattooed by Boog.
That's fucking awesome.
You know, so by the time I was working, because by the time I got to that shop, I already had that tattoo.
Yeah.
So I worked there for like a month or so. It might have been more, but it was like a quick, you know, experience. And like, what pretty much, I remember I didn't tattoo much. And I remember I was doing a tattoo. Like I said, it was wild in there. So there was like a scuffle. There was like a commotion outside. The cops came. You know, pretty much what happened is, you know, I don't want to air out too much people's business, but like maybe some infidelity. What's the word? Infidelity was going on with the shop owner, and the lady pulled up, and some exchange of hands and words was thrown around, and you know, obviously the cops got called, and you know, fucked up as it is, the old ladies, that was her shop, like, you know, and on paper. So like obviously petty as people gonna be, you know, she was like, y'all gotta go, you know. And I remember the cop, it was a lady cop, and I remember she was kind of like, the chick was going to jail. She was going to jail. Like, they had her, like, handcuffed. And, you know, but it was her shop. So the cop was kind of like, look. Because she was like, I remember the lady cop was mad because she did all that shit in front of the kids. And the lady cop was like, man, you don't do that shit. Yeah. Like, you got a problem with your man or whatever, do that shit on y'all's old time. Don't be fighting and doing all that shit. So she was like, look, she going to jail. But, like, this her shop. I'm sorry, but y'all got to go. Yeah. Like, that's what she said. Y'all got to go. Yeah. So she was like, y'all got like, we'll give you a little bit of time to pack your stuff, but y'all gotta go. So everybody was like, shit, okay. So
crazy to see that. What the
fuck? So I got my little suitcase or whatever, threw all my shit in there. I think I was doing a tattoo, and I remember being around like, well, sorry, you know. Yeah. And we packed our shit, and that was it. That was that. As far as I know, that was that for that shop, you know. At least in that location, I don't know if they moved around or I don't know what happened. So, you know, everybody dipped out. I went back, whatever, to the crib and shit. And by that time, I already had got let go of that job. Yeah. So this was like me just tattooing.
Fired.
I got let go. All right, I got my 2 weeks.
I quit.
Yeah. So, you know, I remember they let me go, whatever, and you know, I was tattooing, and then that happened. So at that point, you know, like I said, we were living with my folks and all that shit. So like, yeah, bummer, whatever. No tattoo shop, no nothing. And excuse me. So man, like, shout out to my old lady too, because she, you know, I pretty much was like, man, I want to try to do this shit, right? So
at this point, now you're just kind of feeling like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah. So I was like, man, I'm gonna just. I don't remember the thought process or what went through my mind or what was what, or because I can't never say that I was like, this is what I'm doing. You know what I mean? I don't know. It was just like, I'm just continue to try to do this, you know? Yeah. That was just like what happened. So I want to say I was like, yeah, just trying to get tattooed. I mean, trying to go to tattoo shops. I can't remember how many I hit or what, but I had a portfolio. I made like a little fucking portfolio of all my fucking janky ass tats. You know what I mean? And I really don't remember where all I went, but where I ended up was I ended up going to King's, Tony shop.
Shout out Tony.
Shout out Tony, man. Another dude that I fucking hold in high regard because of that, because I remember walking to his shop. And you seen Tony. I mean, he looks like an older dude now, right? But the motherfucker don't look like he's like has like a little bit of a baby face, and he at the time he had like no visible tattoos.
Yeah.
So I remember walking in and be like, "Hey, is the shop owner here?" And he was like, "That's me." And I was like, "Oh, okay." He don't look like none of the guys that I thought So yeah. I remember I showed him my work, and he looked at it, and he was just like, he's always been like a serious dude, right? So he was kind of like, yeah, nah, man, it's cool. Yeah, he was kind of just like, yeah, like I can see some, I see it or whatever. Like, so he broke it down to me, how like, he was just kind of like, yeah, whatever, right? And then, so he looked at my work. I remember leaving. I don't remember what words were exchanged there, but like at that point, I was still trying. I had I was like friends with the dude that so my friend, his brother owned the barber shop next to Tony's. And my friend used to work for Tony doing piercings.
Okay.
So he had like a relationship with Tony. He had gotten tattooed by Tony a lot, and all that shit. So somehow I like bumped into him. He did tattoos too, actually, as a matter of fact.
Oh.
Like
Piercer slash
tattoo, because he had like tattooed me.
And barber?
So he's a barber now. Okay. I don't know, niggas just be doing everything sometimes,
Yeah.
What you do, everything.
Everything.
So anyways, so like to like not make the story too confusing, but anyway, like I remember we were at a bar and I seen him there and I was talking to him and I was telling him like, oh man, I think Tony was there, and I remember being like, oh yeah, I was trying to get a job at his shop or whatever. I don't know what the words were, but he like was like, ah shit, nigga, I got you, So he went, talked to Tony or whatever. He came back to me and like was like, yeah, like we're gonna make this shit happen or some shit, So I ended up what pretty much got me a job and whatever is I ended up doing a tattoo interview. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
Shit, yeah.
So I tattooed that dude, my homie, at Tony's shop. And Tony was like, that was like the interview. Like he would watch me tattoo.
Were you just nervous as fuck? I've heard of that.
Dog, it was like so I was trying to be cool and collected, right? But it was like the worst fucking feeling, right? Because
I bet.
I mean, I thought I knew how to tattoo, obviously, but like, I didn't, So, but I did the tattoo on him. I remember I did his. At that point, he was already a barber, and he was working at his brother's barber shop. So I did the barber shop logo on him. So, and I was trying my best, So I remember doing it, and there was like people at the shop, and it was just like a lot going on, and I remember being just like fucking. Yeah. I remember Tony coming and like looking and like kind of like just looking. He didn't say too much, and I still don't even remember how it went, but it pretty much worked out. So because he ended up giving me a job.
Yeah, awesome.
So yeah, shout out to Tony. He gave me my shot, man. So even though that was the other shop, it was like technically the first shop I worked at. I always kind of just say Tony's shop was the first shop I worked at because I worked there for,
Because you said you're not there even like a month or two?
Yeah, not even, and all that shit happened, and I didn't really tattoo much. So once I got to Tony's, started working. Still not making a lot of money, you know what I mean? Yeah. And that's why I say shout out to my lady because she held it down, Yeah,
that's hype, man.
She supported me. She fucking was down for me to do this shit, It was not easy because obviously there was a whole switch up of schedule and because I pretty much just sat at that shop, dog, from open to close, that was just it.
Hoping to just get something.
Yeah, and I would catch shit. Sometimes I would. There'd be days I wouldn't do shit. So there was weeks I would make no money. There was weeks where I'd make $100, $200, and it was just a lot of that, Um, but I met a lot of good dudes there. You know, a lot of dudes that I'm still friends with. You know,
Yeah.
Mike. You know, Mike Garcia over there. I think he's at Urban's now. He worked at Tony's. Chris Torres. I met him there.
Yeah.
Who else worked there?
Did you meet Cisco there? Or
So I met.
after?
So I remember Cisco going in there,
Mhm.
and like I think he was maybe trying to work there. I don't know what the whole, but like I met him there. I don't know if he remembers that, but I remember meeting him there. You know, but no, he never worked there while I was there. You know, but so I worked there for, man. I mean, at least. Man, I don't even know. Maybe a year or two. I don't even know. I really don't remember how long I worked there. It might have been like 2 years. You know, I worked there for a minute. You know, and then yeah. I mean, it was cool, man. It was cool working at Tony's shop. You know, I definitely liked it. It was a good experience. I mean, you know, Mike was already like a really good tattooer. Everybody was really good. I was pretty much the shitty one there. You know, Tony was always really good.
Yeah.
He was always really helpful. You know, helping me figure shit out and like, yeah, I remember he was the one that told me. I remember I was doing these kanjis on this girl's back, and I remember like he was like, man, just shade them. He's like, just shade them up until the. He was like, don't outline them. Just shade them into your outline of that. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know how you explained it, but like it made so much sense because I would waste a lot of time outlining these and then shading them. Where he was just like, just fill them in as you're going, you know, and you'll do it faster, you know. Because that's the thing. Like Tony was a really quick tattooer. Mike was a really fucking quick tattooer. So I was like, I had to hurry the fuck up, you know what I mean? Because I was slow. I was slow as fuck, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I was slow. I remember.
We all are, right?
Yeah. I just remember doing tattoos that I remember were like, I mean, it's just funny. Like I think of now where I'm like, shit that I took fucking 2 hours on. Like literally, I probably would take 20 minutes on now. You know, some little butterflies with color and shit. I just didn't know how to pack. I didn't know how to outline. Everything just took me so long. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I worked there. I'm trying to remember what made me want to make the leap, you know, to move around. But at that point, I was already fucking with Bug too, you know. I was already like.
It's funny because I was just thinking about like when we kind of first met. I remember like you used to really look up to that dude like a lot.
Yeah, so like at that point, you know, when I was working at King's, I was already like fucking with Bug. I was like, I don't know how I made that relationship with him, but I was able to like go to his house and hang out with him and draw with him and watch him tattoo and. Excuse me. So, and I took full advantage of that shit, you know? Like, I was like a kid at the candy store, dog. Like, I wanted to go, you know? I knew he was the man, and I wanted to be around it, you know? So, I would go over there and just stay up you know, I would leave Tony's shop and go over there till 5, 6 in the morning, you know, and just hang out with him and, you know, he would tattoo and I would draw. We would draw lettering and flash, and it was fucking cool, you know what I mean?
For sure.
It was fucking cool.
I remember I went up there and did that with you too. Like.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh shit! Damn, that's tight. I don't remember that. But.
Yeah. Because I remember I tell people the story so much. We went over there and he had that Horiyoshi, the third original, and he fucking had like that coffee, like just on top of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just
I tell everyone that story because I think it's crazy. People would die. I would fucking kill to own one.
Yeah.
And this dude had 2 of them and just fucking signed to him and everything.
Yeah. No, he had a bunch of cool shit.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Yeah, it was really fucking cool. You know, and I didn't even like realize the gravity of like hanging out with him either. I just knew that he was like the dude, but I didn't realize how. Yeah, I didn't realize how big. I knew he was big in tattooing, but I didn't realize how big. You know, you know.
So she said.
But I remember. Yeah, I remember because he was the one that told me to go work at Lucky's. Because I remember it was funny because no shade, right? But like, I remember he even was like, I was like trying to move around, I think, or maybe was thinking about moving around, and he was like, "Bro, go to Lucky's, bro. They'll hire you." Kind of like that. I remember, but at that point, I was like, "Shit, I'm gonna try Lucky's," you know, because I don't give a fuck, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I tried a few of the shops when I was like trying to leave King's or whatever, but yeah, I went over there because I don't know how it worked out, but like, yeah, somehow it was either Boog or Frank. Cause I remember Frank somehow, but it was around the time you left.
Yeah, because I love that this is how we met. It's cool that you're coming to this point of like,
yeah.
When I left is when.
Yeah, I pretty much took your spot because that was the spot that opened up. So like, I remember going. I still remember the night I went. I went to talk to whoever, but I ended up talking to Giz. And I still remember Giz was mopping while I was fucking talking to him, you know?
I was like, what?
You know, yeah, you know how Giz is fucking like, yeah, dog, whatever. I don't even remember, but I remember being like, all right. I thought he was like the nigga that, you know, he was, right? But I remember going, I talked to Giz. Pretty much, I remember Giz kind of being like, well, bro, they say, like, I can't remember, I'm pretty sure it was Frank, but pretty much like, Frank said you're good, dog said you're good. Yeah. Or Boog, I don't know.
Yeah.
I might be shouting out Frank, my bad nigga, but, you know, I'm pretty sure he has something to do with that, you know, that transaction.
Yeah.
And then, so pretty much he was like, yeah, like, pretty much Giz was telling me, like, I'm pretty sure you're good, but he didn't want to, like, he was like, we'll let you know, dog, you know. I think I remember like even like calling him like, hey man, so like is my good, you know, and he was.
Who are you?
So I remember it worked out, thumbs up. I went, took my shit, you know, went in that little room. I don't know what room you had at the time. Did you have the room that was right by the counter?
Yeah, the biggest one. That one.
Not the where you know where JC was, right? But the one next to with the windows.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so I didn't get that room. Say somebody. I think at that time it was JC and then Josh and then Miranda and then I took that little shitty room across from her.
That's where I used to be in.
Oh yeah, so I think when you left, motherfuckers just you know what I mean? They just jumped on it, you know. So whatever, I was happy to be in that room, you know.
That's so crazy, bro.
So I remember I worked across from Miranda, and you know, yeah, I set my shit up and. I mean that was fucking cool, right? Working in Deep Ellum.
Yeah.
You know, obviously it wasn't like at Learning Now. Lucky's wasn't the most favorable shop, and I'm sure you know this shit too, being there. You know, but I, you know, at the time, it didn't matter. You know what I mean? It was cool, and then yeah, that's how I met you because pretty much.
It's so cool, just like hearing your shit and what I was going through and how like
it's
almost like
we almost like, and you know that's what's crazy. I always tell people like you know like. Me and you, like, this is our first time working with each other at this shop.
It's very insane.
You know? Because people were like, oh, you know, you worked with him. Even when I said, like, oh, I worked at Lucky's or whatever, and then, like, oh, that's where you worked with Sonny. And it's like, well, nah, I didn't work with him, you know?
Yeah.
But, yeah, you leaving that shop pretty much opened up that door for me, which is crazy, right? Like, that's tight how that worked out.
Yeah, it's just so crazy.
But, you know, I worked at Lucky's for a couple years, you know, and that was a good old time, you know, working in Deep Ellum, getting that little old different lifestyle. Definitely crazy ass hours.
That, you know, I feel like Lucky's is our equivalent of like, you know how we didn't get to go to college and like do the
yeah.
I feel like that's the equivalent of the tattoo world. Like
right, where you just kind of have fun. Why just go have fun?
Have fun.
You know,
it's not about getting better and making money.
Yeah, have fun. So. You know, it was a trip, you know, for sure. And at that point, yeah, at that point, we might have already, as far as me and my old lady, I'm pretty sure we already were, like, living. I can't remember the timeline, right? But, like, at that point, you know, yeah, I was probably making a little bit more money. So I needed to make more money, so I wanted to go to this other shop, you know, so... Yeah, going to Lucky's, obviously I started to make more money, you know. It was busier. People were walking in, you know. People were like making little appointments here and there, you know. It being deep. It's funny because not knowing, even now thinking about it, I didn't know too much about Deep Ellum. I knew about it and the whole tattoo history a little bit, but like, yeah, people, like it's funny how people would just go to Deep Ellum to get tattooed, you know. And it's still very much a thing, right? So, you know, I was there taking advantage of that and, you know, worked with JC, with Josh, with Miranda, you know, and it was cool working with all them, you know what I mean? I learned a lot while working there. Man, seeing a lot of cool shit, you know. It's funny, I have this, like, image in my head. When I think Deep Ellum, I just think at night.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like late and a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing that runs through my head when I think. If I close my eyes, I think Tipelum. When I worked there, it was just like lights, people, drunk,
neon lights everywhere,
neon lights. Everywhere. You know, and yeah, tattooing. You know, going to a lot of bars around there, going to a lot of shows around there. You know, and yeah, meeting a lot of cool people. You know, it was definitely a cool time. You know, I definitely don't regret that one bit. You know, but you know, while working there, definitely those crazy hours, man, it takes a toll, you know, on
absolutely all of it,
on your livelihood, on, you know, when you got a family,
health, all of
it. So like, whatever, right? Like, went through all that shit, and at this point, within that time, I already had like kind of met like Enrique Castillo, you know, briefly, you know. I think he would, you know, Rick's a hustler, so like he would, like, I think he even popped into King's at one point and like sold some books and shit. And I remember Tony buying it. So at this point, like through like Facebook or something, like I was already kind of like interacting with him somehow, you know.
So Boog didn't introduce you?
No.
I know him and Boog are like very cool.
No. So Boog didn't introduce me at all. Now I don't know if that me being I don't know if maybe that like opened Rick's eyes to me, you know. I don't know. I never talked to him about it. I probably should, because I'm curious, you know.
Because that would make sense.
Yeah, I guess now that I think about it, it makes sense to, like, maybe that's why he even was hip to who I was, or like familiar, like, oh, this dude knows books or whatever. But at this point, like, I was already kind of like chopping it up with Rick. I was like, you know, I went to go buy like a tattoo machine from Rick, or I went to go look at a tattoo machine from Rick.
At Fine Line?
At Fine Line.
Oh,
I met him. That was the first time I went to Fine Line. I remember he was selling a Mickey Sharps. I regret, and motherfucking JC got this machine. He still got it.
The microdial one?
The microdial. So I remember Rick was selling it, and I know Rick still regrets selling that because it's a badass fucking machine.
So badass, bro.
But it's even better because it's a Mickey Sharps that dude Gus from Japan rebuilt and redid. I don't know if you know who that dude Gus is. His Gus Ltd.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He makes machines.
Yeah.
Badass machines, and he redid this machine, and it was fucking dope, dog. And I should have fucking jumped on it, but I was like kind of still broke, you know, and couldn't spend whatever he was wanting, $300. But JC, you know, he's always known a little bit more about tattooing than I have, so he jumped on it. So anyway, whatever that was that. So that was like my first interaction with him, and we just still kind of stayed in contact. And then, man, they just pretty much. So I remember Rick kind of like reached out to me and was like, hey man, we need somebody to fill like 2 days at the shop. And I remember it just happened to work out perfectly because it was my 2 days off from Lucky's. So I remember being like, fuck it, man, I need to make bread, you know. So I remember I was working 5 days at Lucky's, and then my 2 days off I was working them at Fine Line. And then I still remember going over there to Fine Line, working those, like, setting up in his room or whatever, and because whoever was there, like, he just dipped out. I forgot who it was. So I did that for like a few months, you know, and you know, just getting to know everybody. And then, like, man, like, little by little, I was like realizing, like, no, not even that. I was like, oh shit, I'm making more money in 2 days over here sometimes I am in a week over here, you know what I mean? So I was kind of like, fuck, you know. But it was working out really well because I was making that money and the other money, you know. But I was working every day, literally
for months. That's crazy.
Every day, you know. But it's funny because it didn't matter, you know. At the time, I was just like,
you're just loving it.
I was just like, this is what I want to do, you know what I mean? That's
the beauty of this shit, bro.
Yeah. This is like, it never hit me, you know. It never hit me like, I mean, obviously, because I'm not trying to gloat like I'm just hard. Like, there's a lot of dudes that work fucking 7 days a week, you know, and they work hard and whatever. But like, at least for me, I never felt like that. I never felt like I was like busting ass or like, because I love it, you know what I mean? So it was like fucking, especially then, more than ever, because I was still very much a sponge, you know. I was a grasshopper, dog. You know, I was
the honeymoon phase.
Yeah, I was green, you know. So, you know, I did that, and I want to say, like, pretty much that spot just kind of stayed open at Fine Line, and it kind of was like, well, I don't know how it worked out or what, but like it kind of was like they needed somebody full time, you know. So that's when I made the decision, pretty much, of like, well, man, it only makes sense to like fucking work. And then at this point, I started learning of who was who and what was what, you know what I mean? So I was like, yeah, man, like I can go over here and like fucking work with Rick and Tom and Casey, you know, and Todd and, you know, whatever, right? Like be around Mike, and, you know, it was fucking cool, you know what I mean? So I just said, fuck it, you know what I mean? I dipped out from Lucky's and worked at Fine Line, and man, that's when shit, you know.
Yeah, because you were there for what, 8, 9 years?
No, I was there for like maybe 7 or 8 years.
7 or 8 years, yeah.
At Fine Line, you know, in Garland, and that was, man, that was like, it was cool, man. You know, that was like, that's no shun to any shop that I've been at, and even ours, you know. But that was like, to this day, like up into our shop, like that was the coolest shop I ever worked at. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because I remember even talking to you about it when like you were leaving, how like the mixed feelings you were having on it.
Yeah, I was torn, man. You know.
Yeah, that was your home. That was. Home.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it there. You know what I mean? I loved the people that I worked with or whatever. But yeah, anyway, yeah, I worked there, and then I mean that shop opened
all the doors for you.
Yeah, so many doors of just like learning, meeting people, experiencing, traveling, tattooing. Yeah, just, you know, doing just all this cool shit that I've done. I credit it to that shop and the people that work there. You know what I mean? I learned so much. They were all grown men. They're all grown men, and man, I learned so much being there. You know, but yeah, so I worked there, and obviously by that time, me and you were friends and shit, and you know, we were cool. You would come by the fucking Fine Line, and you know, whatever, like, yeah, you know, but obviously every ship has to sail, you know what I mean? So like, and I credit COVID to that, because that's when I had to, like, you know, dip out. So
it's
like,
funny because I remember being at your crib and you were talking about like, man, trying to make this move, or like,
yeah. So I remember, like, you know, obviously being in the old school shop like that and all that, like, no booth rent, no none of that shit, walk-ins only. I didn't ever do appointments or none of that, or very rarely. So at that point, you know, COVID came. Fucking the world got flipped upside down, and you know, motherfuckers still got to make money, you know. So I was working, but at that point I was like, well, you know, I mean, I feel like I'm a broken record. I've told you the story, but like, you know, whatever, like we still had to make money, you know. And so at that point, I was like, well, I'm gonna do these tattoos during COVID and just make appointments, and like whoever's serious. So that's when I started doing the whole like taking deposits and like doing all that stuff, and like you know, obviously it was weird because I was doing all that. I was like training myself to be a appointment only artist, but at that point it didn't feel like it, because I was just so worried about not getting COVID. You know what I mean? Because I remember like tattooing, and like every time I tattooed, I was just freaking out. You know?
How I brought up like, you're like a germaphobe too. So
I mean,
I brought that up earlier. So I mean, we're all afraid of it, but people that are definitely like.
So I remember just fucking just, but you know, whatever, right? Like, it is what it is. Motherfuckers still have to make money, you know? So like, at this point, I'm living in my house for however long I have been living in. I'm mortgage and, you know, whatever, and bills and, but whatever, you know, it was not a bad time to be tattooing, honestly, you know, during COVID. So I did that. I still remember, like, I did that a few times at the shop, trying to be all like secretive and shit. You know, like, all right, well, we'll do it, but we're just, you know, coming to the back, no lights, whatever, you know. And then, like, little by little, I started noticing, like, I see Rick there, you know. And then I, like, caught Tom there. And then, you know, we're all kind of like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You know, and it's like, shit, I'm tattooing. Like, well, shit, me too, you know. So we pretty much, I feel like most of the shops still tattooed the entire time, you know, of COVID or whatever, and on the low, and whatever, COVID passed, we were able to open back up. But at that point, when we opened back up, man, my mind was turned. You know, I was like, damn, I don't need to be in the walk-in shop. Like, I can survive on my own. You know, I can fucking make these appointments, have people drop these deposits, and kind of secure some shit. So, man, I did what I guess anybody else would do, right? I thought selfishly, and and was like, fuck it, like, um, I knew I wasn't gonna get booth rent here, but I knew I didn't want to, like, I still did it for a few months, like still worked there. Or I don't even know, it was a few, might have been like almost a year. I don't even know how long I stayed after COVID. I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't either, really.
Yeah, but it was definitely a few months, and kind of just still like in the back of my mind, like I knew it was time. I just knew it was time to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was my time there was done. So, and it's funny because I feel like although I never said it, people like caught that at the shop. Because I remember them being like when I finally came out, everybody was like, "Man, fucking knew it." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's crazy, like that whole energy thing. Like you can.
Yeah. Like I think in my head I was gone already. I just needed to like find a way out. And not from like, not that they were holding me there. Just like I was so just drawn to that place, I didn't want to leave it. It was magical. You know what I mean? And yeah, so whatever. Fucking finally made the leap. Left. Went to Cisco shop. Studio 14. Shout out Cisco. And then, even going there, I just kind of went there because I wanted to try to do the whole appointment only thing and booth rent thing, and I knew he was opening the shop and he was down. I asked him, he was like, yeah, and I was like, cool. I told him how, what I was trying to do, and it's funny because even then, like, obviously me and you hadn't talked about no shop, and even in my head, I hadn't even thought about a shop,
Yeah.
But I was like being there for a few months. I was like seeing how, and I credited Cisco a lot to this, like my thought process, because I was seeing how he was moving and how he was doing things, and it was kind of a fresh shot for him. So I was like, damn. Not even like, oh, I can do this too. Like I was just very motivated by like the way he moves and the way he does things, and like I was like, damn, man, like that's tight. You know what I mean? Like I want to fucking do that too, and and. Not that I didn't like it there, nothing, but like it's funny because like it never felt like home,
Yeah.
Or maybe it was never meant to be, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Because I mean, you weren't there too long, were you?
No, I was there maybe like a year.
Was it a year? Damn, I
maybe
think it was
maybe right under or right over, but like no more than a year.
Right there, yeah.
So yeah, I think few months into it, like seeing all that, like the thought of like maybe getting and I was just like, man, maybe having a shop wouldn't be a bad thing, but like that's when obviously like I didn't really know who or what. Like I don't even remember if I thought about doing it by myself from the beginning. I think it was more like I'm gonna do it with somebody, and obviously I don't have a lot of friends, so like I was just like, well, the only friend I got I feel like I could trust was you, right? So yeah, that's when like I felt like we could do this, right? So yeah, that's when obviously I don't remember that conversation, but like I remember we talked about it, or I brought it up to you, or I don't know if you brought it up to me.
No, you brought it up to me because it's funny. I tell so many people like that we've been so cool for so long, and you've been one of my closest friends, that I'm like, man, I want to open a shop with this food, but I'm like, I know I can't ask because I knew at any point of that time you'd have been like, no, because I just felt like the whole, like, I was like, he'll have to want to just do it because I was ready.
Yeah. So, and that's, you're right, because I wasn't, if you would have asked me
at any point
during, especially during like fine line days, I would have been like, nah, because it was never a thought. I was like, never, and honestly, the thought was like, I'm never going to open a shop, because I was like, for what? It's fucking saturated, there's too many tattooers, why would I leave this? It's fucking cool, whatever. But, man, COVID, shout out to COVID. Shout out to that Wuhan lab.
Wow.
I'm just playing. I'm just fucking playing. Shout out to the leak. Shout out to them niggas eating them bats.
Goddamn Asian.
Yeah. But, yeah, so that's that. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what it was. Like, I knew that, I was in limbo. I feel like, after I left Fine Line, I was like very much like in like this like weird. I was in a weird. It was a weird time and a weird place.
For everybody,
yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it was weird, and especially for myself, leaving like that shop, I was comfortable. I left my comfort zone,
and that's always terrifying.
Yeah, and it was just weird, and making this money that like now I was like charging differently, and like with appointments and like whatever, right? Like it was just a weird time, and then like this freedom of having like time too, you know what I mean? Because I was like appointment only, so I would sometimes only have one appointment, for 2-3 hours, and I'd be like, that's it. So that was cool.
Yeah,
absolutely. I wasn't used to that. Prior to that, it was like,
because I know that was one of my selling points when I was telling you, like, bro, you need to do this, because I've always told you so much how I respect. You're such a family man. You're like a husband and father first, and I'm like, bro, for your family, this is gonna be amazing for you, and I knew you would love it, because you're like, because I know you love just being with your family.
Yeah, and that's definitely what COVID showed me too, because obviously like during COVID we had a lot of time too, and me and my old lady always talk about it, like, man, COVID was not a bad time either, because like we just kind of hung out and did shit together and went to parks and fucking.
Yeah, that's like the hard thing, because obviously there's millions affected like horribly from COVID,
for sure,
but it was crazy how it worked out really well for a lot of different
people. Like just speaking for myself, crazy. Like I mean, don't get me wrong, it was crazy because it was obviously like a horror movie, right? Because like we would have like good days, and then you turn on the fucking news and you're like, damn, this shit's really going on, and like the world is shut down and it's fucking crazy. And I remember talking to, at this point my oldest at the time was 12 or however old she was, or 11 or 12, and I remember being like, man, you should really take like a mental memory of this, because this is like the craziest shit that's ever happened while we've been alive that I can think of,
For sure.
And I just remember being like, damn, that's a trip, because the world was
and it seems like a faint, distant memory and dream now, and it wasn't that long ago.
Nah, it was not even not even 4 years ago.
Yeah, 4. Yeah.
So it's crazy, like, it wasn't long ago, So, yeah, man, it was a trip. It was like a lot of like weird times during like working at Cisco's, and good, like I said, good time. I don't want to like discredit his shop or nothing like that. Like,
listen, man, fuck them.
Yeah, he gonna listen to shit like, man, you know what? Give my Texas back. You ain't getting it back, though.
Yeah. So you a hoe for giving it to him.
Nah, but like I really do credit like Cisco a lot. Like watching him move, man, was like watching a teacher. You know what I mean? Like I was like, damn.
And like I've told you before too. I feel like think and move so similar.
So so like I was just like very motivated by that. Like I was just like, damn, like this dude's fucking my age or younger. I don't know how old I forget how Cisco is, but like,
because I think he's like a year younger than me.
So he might be like, I feel like he's our age, or if not, maybe right around there.
I don't know why I want to say 32. I'm 33.
I don't know. We should find out, right? But Jamie, find out how old Cisco. Yeah, just watching him move and all that shit, and
it's like we're radio a call. Oh, it's actually Cisco right now. It's like I'm 43.
Oh my god, damn, dog, loser. Yeah. So that's obviously, and then I felt like I never wanted to go backwards. Yeah, that was always my mentality with this shit. Like I never, every time I moved the shop, I never wanted to go back.
Yeah, you wanted to be.
And it's funny because like as much as you knew how much I loved Fine Line, but I knew I wasn't gonna go back. Like I knew I wasn't. Like it was gonna take some bullshit for me to go. Like some like fucking like damn, I gotta go back. But like I knew I wasn't gonna go back. And then at that point, I didn't really just want to move to another shop. Yeah. Like even if I didn't feel like the fit was right at Cisco's, I was like, nah, this like I ain't finna just be jumping to shops and trying shit out, and I can't do that. So the only other option I felt like was time to fucking do this shit and. Time flies, baby.
Hey.
And luckily you were down, and you were fucking all for it, and you dealt with my bullshit like in the beginning.
Most of us, this is a learning process.
Yeah, and it's been cool, So that's kind of the gist of my story as far as for tattooing, you know. And obviously there's a bunch of shit in between there, but like
for sure, but it's cool. Like I said, and this is like the main thing. I want to do with this podcast with you, like, because it's funny because listening to all this, I'm just like, it's cool to be like, okay, this nigga ain't making this shit up because I've known all that stuff.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Just fact checking. I'm like, okay, he didn't change nothing.
Yeah,
like, I'm gonna watch stuff and all that.
Yeah.
But it's cool. Like, I'm hoping this just gives cause like I said, you have a lot of clients, and then like even my clients that know you, and like I feel like people are like, oh, like I want to know this story. This is the first time it's gonna be recorded, and now it's gonna be like accessible to like just people.
Right.
And I just think that's fascinating, and I know people are gonna want to be like, oh, this is cool. I just want to know.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. No, and I agree, and I feel like with all our, all this shit, so. Yeah, and I feel like we even when we do yours.
This is question 1. So now 2. Current state of tattoo.
But yeah, so it's pretty much that and then here we are. Me and Sonny got Time Flies, and you'll hear Sonny's story here soon coming up. Sure. So yeah, I guess maybe.
We're gonna like get better at like
opening
and like even having a closing.
Yeah. So I feel like this should be the close of it, right? So like
fly times and then time flew.
Yeah.
Flew times.
But check us out on Instagram. Mine is Hector_Carmolinga on Instagram. If you want to make an appointment, there's a number on there.
Yeah. Or you could go to Time Flies Instagram. You can make an appointment with any of us there.
Yeah. There's me, Sonny, JC, Easy, Sin. He's up and coming.
Yeah, up and coming. He's
so
he's dangerous.
Right, but check us out, man, and hopefully y'all dig these podcasts. We're gonna try to pump them out.
Yeah, awesome. Deuces. Street, bro.